Welcome back to Sheena's Gloominess and a whole new episode of Enchanted Escape. Today's episode is indeed a special one, as you have possibly already noticed. We're going to be together going onto a 𝐿ACKpink musical journey through all different songs which have officially been released on Bandcamp, of course, as well as on the streaming device of your personal preference. And I was way too late because I just returned from my medical internship yesterday and it was such a stressful day. I have just seen this announcement on Facebook because previously I have already been addicted, just as you possibly as well, to the short sound samples which I've been sharing on Instagram. I was lacking words when I saw that the official sound files have now been uploaded to Bandcamp as well as to all different streaming devices. What shall I say more? I got enchanted immediately. And you possibly as well, so don't hesitate. Leave this video now. The review is not as important as you listening to the files yourself. But of course, if you're interested in the video review version, then stay tuned. So first of all, I decided to refer to the 3 songs which have officially been pre-released, of which we also can discover. So without further ado, let's rightly begin with the first track, which has officially been pre-released, and this was Divergence. Divergence already captivates its listener by the introducing coldness of sounds, which already electronically capture the main core and main spirit of the ongoing song, and continues with an even more imposing overall sound and vocal concept, which exactly reflects the emotional exclusion from society and especially the suppression when it comes to major greater institutions. By soundscape-wise, ideally confronting the listener with the fraud which is happening in our world, not only concerning humans among each other within society's structures and bondings, but also caused by officialism and simply the impact of greater institutions on the individual. In a perfect blend with intensely dark and seemingly disembodied, almost hidden by a blackened shadow sphere, a blackened veil of shadows, appearing vocals, Divergence then evolves into a statement of captivity of the individual, ultimate exposure of oneself, and general lostness. Soundscape-wise, it perfectly gets reflected how hostile and profit-seeking our environment has turned out to be, or is just on its way to evolve into. And this is exactly the point and the main core why I'm personally so impressed by the album and the general message, because Divergence can actually be considered a last final warning shot in consideration of the world and how it's going to be developing in the next few days and next decades. And that's also one major reason why I, being a long-time political, social and animal rights activist, am so fond of the message, which not only gets musically visible through the lyrics, but gets directly projected onto the listener through the electronically inclined soundscapes and, yeah, just the majestically played bass and guitar lines. So let's unveil the tangent within this highly special song and begin.
Breaking down my borderline, a shiver ran down my spine. From this land my heart will be fight. A shiver ran down my spine. They say, no fear, no fame, give away. So much to gain, no way. These are mixed emotions. When the river turns black again, stay, stay. No fear, no fame, give away. So much to gain, no way. These are mixed emotions. When the river turns black again.
Let's rightly continue with the next song, which I'd love to introduce. And this song is called Ball and Chain. The intense coldness of sounds, which overwhelms the listener in a very positive sense, get them blended with heavy and perfectly realized guitar riffs. This exact combination then creates the shattering and just falling apart image of a world which is slowly breaking out of its own chains, and especially also casting out those individuals who are seeking for personal self-realization and just simply personal freedom in this exact environment, which constantly continues with its corrupt games, mainly defined by power-based politicians and very harshly predetermined social standards, and of course completely ruthless exploitations based on and encouraged by power-hungry individuals within the economic lobby. This exact feeling of being chained to society and the system in general, mainly reflected by the negative principles and the negative impact of the capitalists' failed principles, gets then even more intensified and underlined by the dark and almost intensely haunting vocals by the lead singer, which draw us as listeners into the relevance of what's happening currently in our society and world. It's surely a most impressive song, considering the fact that the mournfully impressive and very distinctive atmosphere of the song, which step by step fades at the end of this musical masterpiece, stays in our heads and just haunts us and only slowly vanishes, leaving us speechless with a blackened shiver of disillusionment. Yet, by offering the possibility to burst out of the chains and of course neglecting any kind of uniformity within society itself. So let's begin with the ultimate musical statement of freedom.
I shall never belong to nobody.
Let's continue with the third pre-release song, which is called Today No Day. Before the guitar passages get introduced within this song, Today No Day appears with some electronically created sounds, which already prepare the musical scene and musical stage for the upcoming final breakout and confusion, which is going to be unfurling in the following passages. The insisting vocal passages, which get ideally accentuated and backed up by the perhaps darkest soundscapes which we could all imagine, introduce a purely mesmerizing video. The contrast between the fact that most humans, especially in the globalized countries, get lulled into a full sense of what is actually happening in our surroundings, then realizing the harsh reality of wars, exploitations of whole nations in other countries as well as in our own ones, the destruction of nature in general, simply the punishment and major discriminations against other minorities, or simply against those who have the intense bravery to stand up against a power-seeking, power-based government, which is mainly infiltrated by frauds and selfish superiors and their own henchmen. And this reality then also in the video slowly step by step comes to light, also by visually introducing the carousel, which could stand for the remaining innocent spirit within our world, but also on the other hand, simply the fact of covering up truth. What I also favor a lot about this song is of course the imposing and most impressive vocal performance. We as listeners then sense the final breakout which is going to happen, not only in the song, but also in our current world situation. And although the world is announced to be dead within the song, we as listeners and being understanding and emphatic individuals still sense the feeling of having the power over those who are trying to break the world apart by rejecting any kinds of conformity or uniformity and standing up for those who don't have the possibility to revolt against social insecurities or major discriminations.
There's nothing left to buy. The world has gone to die.
So let's now continue with all the other songs on the album. Litany surely features guitars of pure darkened gothic rock delight. Those guitar lines already impress us as listeners in the beginning and draw us musically into its own created distant blackened spheres. The deep vocals of the lead singer introducing the phrase "it's about time" resemble a true wake-up call coming from a dark vanished passage, and now reminds the listener and each individual on this planet to stay tuned of what is going to be happening and unfurling within the world, and simultaneously reminding the listener of a past and present situation which is getting even worse and especially dangerous for our own personal freedom and will. What I favor most about this song are the guitar solos, again increasing the tension. I take my hat off to the musicians for choosing Litany as the beginning opening track, because it perfectly captures the spirit which is then going to be unfurling within the other passages of the other songs. Let's begin with Litany.
It's about time, the urge to communicate as thought all of the time. The blame just for being who I am, trying to find a way to stop the ticking clocks.
Let's continue with the song Jay-bez. From the title of this very special song, we can possibly discover some crossovers to the story of the biblical figure Jay-bez, who was mentioned 3 times in the Old Testament, and mainly got his name for the reason that his birth is said to have caused many pain for his mother. The mystery about this man called Jay-bez is that although he got mentioned in the Bible several times, his family and familiar history seems to be eradicated from the Old Testament completely. So he seemingly had great relevance for the Bible and the religion itself, but on the other hand, there is not a lot of information existing about him. It is important to mention that he had a very strong personality with characteristics to which most of us can relate in some way, because Jay-bez is mentioned to have had a very pitiful past. He is mournfully crying to God. In his intense prayer, he expresses that he absolutely wants to eradicate any kinds of further pain on others which could be caused by himself, and he is completely hopeless when it comes to the future and future perceptions. So this special song vocally expresses a stunning emotionality, and again, the sound spheres draw us into the story in the best way possible. So one of the most impressive overall sound concepts will follow now.
Looking for shelter, a homeless isle. Show me the passion, show me the needs, faithful and caring for those who seek.
The next song, which I'd love to introduce, is called Heaven Sent. The bass lines within Heaven Sent are purely majestic and even more highlighted, or should I say dark lighted, by a very impressive overall electronically inclined wall of sound composition. So as far as what I have been able to detect from the vocal expression styles as well as from some bits of the lyrics, we might expect a hymn for us dark souls unveiling in this song. I am most curious about the official lyrics sheet. Let's begin with the preciousness of this amazing song.
As I always feel so miserable, make room for the creatures of the night. When I touch the ground, when I'm making any sound, when I come to realize I'm addicted to hanging around. When I come to you, my friend, when I come to you, my friend, you seem like heaven sent, and I'll meet you in the end.
Let's continue with another song which is called Savannah. Savannah surely does count as one of my absolute favorite songs. The song atmospherically as well as musically leads us into an emotionally unveiled, seemingly never-ending and very devastating desert, which exhausts and of course also drains our mental existence and leaves us completely disillusioned and devastated. But instead of further drawing us into the disillusionment and instead of further drawing us down, this musical masterpiece leads us down a trail for discovering a darkened sense of shelter, a certain form of compassionate understanding in its own soundscapes and the vocal development. The thrilling guitar solos, which then get intertwined with almost impeaching vocal performances, musically convey the feeling of still being able to seek for illusion within the utter disillusion and despair. Let's continue with another song which I'd love to introduce, and this song is called Alacrity. As the individual in our current society is always and constantly expected to react and also work in the fastest way possible, which at the end destroys our personal freedom and will and also the perception of self-expression. We're constantly seeking for profits and fulfilling the needs of others. Therefore, we're rejecting our own positions and our own needs by slowly, step by step, diving into conformity and social submission. Soundscape-wise, we as listeners get again overwhelmed in a very positive sense, more on an electronically inclined way, but also intertwined with guitar passages which could have never been played in a more intriguing and more fascinating way. So, without further ado, let's begin. The next song which I want to introduce is called They Knew. They Knew is a song which vocally as well as soundscape wise totally stands out from the other ones. I must confess I first got shivers all over my physical and mental existence when the first heavy soundscapes got introduced, and we personally immediately start to feel being trapped in a false universe by the highly expressive and definitely haunting vocal passages which are sung in an entirely different way, and proves again that Ground Nero is, as I already stated in my previous video, my first video which I've done about this amazing band, is one of the most innovative and unique bands which do exist. So now we have come to the end of this video, almost, because there's one song left. One song which has already made its way into my personal absolute masterpiece musical collection because I appreciate it a lot. Kitezh. As a mystery-loving person, also very interested in history itself, I of course awaited the full version of Kitezh. I had great expectations for this upcoming song. It was actually the first song which I listened to because I was so curious about the development within the soundscapes and vocal performances that I just had to click on this song first. And I already knew that my expectations would be fulfilled in a very positive sense and possibly even surpassed, but I didn't expect this form of surpassing a talent. Kitezh, known for being a drowned Russian city in mythology, according to an old Russian legend, which is even claimed to be a lot older than the first manifestations and testaments where the city was first mentioned in a written sense, because those first statements have been published in the late 18th century. In those written testaments, the vanishing of Kitezh was introduced for the first time in a written way, and it was also mentioned that it was all caused by the impact of a war. When we're referring to the song again, the wall of sound overwhelms the listener in a very successful way and keeps us enchanted throughout the following passages, because we as listeners are constantly having the impression of being stuck in a distant parallel sphere where the city of Kitezh gets rebuilt, so the city slowly appears in all its glory again. The theme of doomsday and destruction, of course, also is present in this song, because in the legend it is claimed that Kitezh will arise from the ashes in the lake Svetlaya again when the end of the world is very close. And in this special song, a very distinctive future perception of the human society in general gets introduced after the world has ended and our universe decided to fall apart, caused by all the negative happenings which are currently evolving in our world. Those individuals who are pure and brave at heart then seek for the great possibility to return back to our true home, which is meant to be represented by the incarnation and, of course, the metaphorical illusion of Kitezh, for discovering shelter and final relief within surroundings that finally don't cast us out and also don't lead to our dissatisfaction, but actually give us support, especially lead to the cure of all the pain from which we've suffered previously in society as being freedom-seeking and self-determined emphatic beings. Therefore, Ground Nero is soundscape-wise, as well as through the vocal expression styles, creating a kind of blackened universe on its own for all pure souls who are seeking for the ultimate liberty and peace, of course, on all levels. And this is what I consider highly admirable about this special song. What I also favor a lot is the very atmospherical and almost dramatically inclined to step-by-step development and the final metaphorical access to this long-forgotten city and eventually expose what we are all seeking for, a parallel universe to dive into and escape the current misconception, discriminations, prejudice, power-based suppression and injustice in our current world and society. So let's dive deep into the metaphorical and soundscape-wise created lake for discovering one of the most intriguing legends in a musical way. Most importantly, the official release date of Ground Nero's full album Divergence is going to be taking place on the 4th of October. Of course, Ground Nero has planned an official release show for this stunning album where they will perform all different songs on stage. So consider visiting the live show, which will take place on the 5th of October. So now, at the end of the video, let's await the blackened doomsday with the most impressive songs and musical prophecies by Ground Nero. Await the physical album release of Divergence. Click all the links in my description box for having the possibility to listen to all the songs in full length. Get yourself the previous precious albums Beyond and scales, which also are in the background of my video. Which song overwhelmed you most out of this album of pure dark and delight? Write your personal favorite song in the comments down below. I'm curious as always. Have a preciously gloomy day. See you in my next episode of Enchanted Escape, perhaps for another band presentation, perhaps for the end of the world. Lots of love, Sheena. Bye for now.